So this is the scramble for my 1904 PR single, which was 11 algs floated to 8. Uh, One of the alg saves was from floating parity, uh, and the other two were from edge floating. Keep in mind, I don't actually know any edge floating. I do know some, I mean, I use FU and UFR. I do know some BU, but I don't really use it in solves. I'm not really comfortable with it. So what I do is instead I just do a U2 and then pretend it's FU and then go from there. So the edge floats in this scramble were RU and LU. And again, I don't know the actual algs for these, so I just did setup moves. So we're just going with a scramble. You have this to this to this, and a cycle break. I just shot here, this to this to this, and then parity with here. So my last one to target is this one, which is BUL. Now, so the thing is, now if I were to do a UFUR swap, this would actually go here and so on. But instead, I did UBUL swap. A couple of reasons. One, my main alg for BUL is UBUL swap. It's just the old Walkman alg and it's really fast. I think it's faster than the UFUR alg, so it is my main alg. So for me, this would have been a 10 alger, not an 11, irrespective. It's just 11 algs. It's probably 11 algs if you do UFUR. 11 algs if you do UFUR. But it would have been 10 algs for me, irrespective, because this is pseudo-solved. Because when you do UBUL swap, you want UL to be here and UB to be here. So this is actually pseudo-solved. So you get an extra solved piece from doing this. So the thing is, the principle of this is that you can exploit pseudo-solved pieces and scrambles by knowing multiple parity algs. So for example, if my last corner target was, for example, if something like this, for example, is quite an easy one. For example, if you have this as your last corner target and you are solved, now you could do just the standard alg, but the problem is that does UFUR swap, right? And what that basically means is that you are going to be unsolving the solved piece. So it's useful to know multiple parity algs for each case. So you can then exploit, in this case, I just swap my buffer with FU with RF, and then I could just do R and then J prime, U prime, R prime, right? So in this case, it works out fine because my main alg was going to take advantage of this pseudo-solved piece. So when I traced edges, I immediately saw that this is solved. So I would float to UB, except UB is also pseudo-solved. So I floated here to LU. So from here I went this, and this. And now this normally would be BU, but it's actually LU because UBUL swap. So that's the end of that cycle. And from here I floated to this, and this, right? So that's one cycle. And the thing is, I don't know any algs for UB, for UR or UL. So what I did is I just U, and then that alg, U2, because we went from RU buffer to LU buffer. And now this is at my main buffer, which is FU. So I'm just pretending this is FU and doing the algs, doing the FU algs for this now, pretending that this is actually LU, but I've turned it into FU. And so this is just S prime. This is just the standard alg U, and my edges are solved. And the rest of the solve was fairly standard.
So the thing is, as soon as you're, in my opinion at least, as soon as you're comfortable with your UF algs, you should start floating in this manner by setting up to UF. So for example, UB is just a U2 away, UR and UL are just U moves away, RF and R RF and LF are F moves away. For me, because I use FU, it's FR and FL buffer, and I just do an FR and F prime, and R BR and BL for you are going to be R prime UR or U prime L prime away, and you just do that, and then you do the UF alg for that case, and then you undo the setup move, and that's done. And the thing is, it's never going to be as good as knowing the actual algs, because these algs are going to be at best equivalent to the actual alg, and in most cases slightly worse than the actual alg, but it is going to be better than doing two algs, because U2 alg U2 is always going to be faster than two algs, right? So here's the thing. The actual ramifications of this are that if you start doing this as soon as you're comfortable with UF, basically you're going to develop a familiarity with floating tracing. much earlier than you would otherwise. And floating tracing is not trivial, as you saw in that example. UL being pseudo-solved in the place of UB meant that the cycle would end on, for me, blue-white instead of orange-white. Now, a normal LU cycle would start with orange-white and end with orange-white, but in this case, it would end with blue-white, and that's the tricky part, right? Uh, that's not something that you would be able to do seamlessly if you don't practice like this. And the thing is, when you do setup moves like this, for example, if you're using UB buffer and do a U2 and you turn it into UF, your other U layer pieces move as well. So UR and UL are also then offset by a U2. So if you're doing UB to UL to any other piece, and you do a U2, you've turned UL into UR. So you need to remember that you need to work that out during exec. And the thing is, this sort of translation is quite easy to do for edges because it's only two stickers a piece. It's much harder to do for corners, which is why my personal recommendation has always been start doing edge floating in this algless way and learn the actual algs for corner float. So I know full U layer corners and like most of D layer, but I don't know any actual edge floating because I'm just sort of making do this way. I'll learn it at some point, but my personal opinion is that what this means is that as soon as you're comfortable with UF UFR, you should start learning UFL or UBR, whatever your second buffer is going to be, but also you should start doing edge floating in this way. And the normal contention that people have is that edge floating is easier to learn, so you should learn edge floating and then learn corner floating afterwards. I think you should learn the actual algs for corner floating because you can't do this translation stuff, this you setup you move setup stuff. It's much harder to do for corners because of translation issues. But it's pretty easy to do for edges. So you learn the actual algs for corners, and you start floating this way for edges, and you do both together. Uh, and if you don't do that, just do edges. It is extremely easy. It is incredibly easy, and you are basically giving up on easy scrambles, or you're losing out on a lot of easy scrambles by not doing it. Yeah, that's it.